Welcome to Can You Hear Me? Because sometimes I can't hear you. Now here is your host, Noah Z.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Can You Hear Me? Because sometimes I can't hear you. Today I have a special guest. She is an audiologist from the University of North Carolina. Please welcome Dr. Stephanie Sjoblad.
Hi, I'm pleased to be part of this episode. I'm Dr. Stephanie Sjoblad from UNC Chapel Hill, where I am a professor and director of our clinic, the UNC Hearing and Communication Center. I work with patients of all ages, primarily adults, while training graduate students who want to become audiologists. It's a great job. I really love it, and I'm looking forward to talking with you today, Noah.
Thank you. So to start us off today, could you talk about your hearing loss story?
Sure. Kind of a unique story because back when I was born, they did not have universal newborn hearing screening programs. So most of the children who were diagnosed with hearing loss were found much later in life, usually ages 4 to 6. I was about 6 years old when my hearing loss was discovered, and I actually am one of 3 children in my family who all have hearing loss. And so I've worn hearing aids most of my whole life, as well as my siblings, and at this point in our lives, we all have cochlear implants.
Wow, that is very interesting. That is, in my opinion, is kind of cool how, you have other family members around you who have hearing loss. I think that's kind of cool to share the experience with others.
Absolutely. We always thought it was interesting that all 3 of us had hearing loss because the odds of that were statistically not that common, especially since our parents had normal hearing. So it was just definitely kind of a unique situation, but we saw it as perhaps a gift that we could do something with, which we all found out about later on in life.
Yes, that is very cool. So my next question for you is, did you have anything that grabbed onto you that made you join this occupation?
Yeah, I actually have a degree in business from Boston College. That was not my primary interest in going into audiology. This was definitely a second career for me. When I was in Boston College during my senior year, I had to write a senior honors thesis. And at that point, I did some research into the hearing healthcare industry and learned a lot of things that I thought were very surprising. And it kind of started to spark my interest in maybe working in this field. It took about another 8 to 10 years before I could actually find someone that thought that someone with hearing loss could be an audiologist. So I had a whole nother career in business for quite a number of years before I went back to school to get my master's degree and then eventually my doctoral degree in audiology.
Kind of amazing how you start off with something and then something can spark and it can just change your whole aspect in your career.
Absolutely. But I will tell you that everything that I did leading up to becoming an audiologist has been beneficial for me in the job that I do now as clinic director. All of my business experience is useful as I run a clinical operation and make sure that, we balance the budget and that the marketing is done and that the customer relations and customer service is done well. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing that it took a while to get here. All of those experiences I had beforehand have enabled me to do this job better.
Yes, definitely. That is I love that. That is so cool. Would you mind talking a little bit about your occupation? Do you see patients day to day?
Sure. As clinic director, I am primarily in charge of making sure our clinical operations where we train our doctoral students is functioning well. So that's my overarching job. I'm also a professor at UNC, so I teach 4 different doctoral level classes to the students in the AUD program. And then I see patients about 2 days a week, primarily adult patients. And when I'm seeing these patients, I usually have a doctoral student working alongside me, learning how to do the things that need to be done so that they can eventually practice autonomously. So it's kind of a great job. I do a variety of things, and I'm training the next generation of audiologists to go forth and bring forth best practices and the best, most recent level of research as they go out and start practicing.
That is so cool. I mean, I have thought about becoming an audiologist before, and I mean, I bet that the people that you are teaching are absolutely blessed to have you, because I bet you are doing an amazing job.
Thank you. I really like what I do, and I think that's a key thing for anything we do in life, is if you feel like you enjoy it and it doesn't feel like a job, I think then you actually bring forth your best efforts, and the gifts just sort of manifest themselves because you're doing something that you were supposed to be doing, a calling, so to speak.
Could you talk a little bit about what makes a good audiologist or someone in your occupation?
I mean, sometimes we talk about audiology as being sort of a blend of being someone who's a good scientist, but they also have good people skills. You know, there's a diagnosing process of determining what the hearing loss is, what's causing the hearing loss, you know, what are the underlying things that we need to look at medically and that the physician needs to weigh in on. And then how do we then work with the patient after we've diagnosed the hearing loss, and we need to work through figuring out how to resolve their communication difficulties. And that's not quite as much of a science as it is an art, sort of a juggling of both of those things. You have to know how to use the technology, but you also have to know how to talk with the patient empathize, and, you know, help them to work through problems. You've got to be a good problem solver, I would say.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
My next question is, I've noticed during this pandemic that it's kind of been hard for me, especially with the masks it's very hard for me to hear. I know I work with a deaf educator at my school, and she wears one of those like face shields where you can see her entire face, and I've noticed those have helped me a lot. So my question for you is, how has COVID impacted you, and what have you done to help cope with it?
Yes, I will agree. The masks are difficult. Some places are not allowed to use the ones that have the clear fronts in them because they're not, you know, approved for the clinics by, you know, their hospital credentialing and FDA. And even if they are approved, sometimes it's difficult to get those clear masks. So we definitely see a lot of people telling us that they're trying to communicate with people and they can't see their lips. So one of the first things we'll encourage is that people make sure there are no distracting sounds around them. If possible, turn down background sounds. Be sure to sit, you know, socially distanced, but as close as you're allowed to sit, and to speak slowly and clearly, and to rephrase rather than saying the same thing again the second time if someone misses it. When someone misses something behind the mask, it may be that combination of words are sounds that just don't transmit as well. And if a person can change the wording, it can sometimes help to sort of bridge the gap and enable someone to catch the message.
Yes, I completely agree.
We also, for a few people, Noah, we have put on a special assistive listening device. If they don't have hearing aids yet, we will put them under some headphones and use a microphone while we're talking to them to try to help get the sound into their ear a little bit better. So that's been a good strategy. And another strategy that we are using are just using live captioning sometimes. There are different apps that we can download onto our phone or the computer which can translate what we're saying. And so if someone is really struggling to hear us through the mask, then, you know, as we're working through the process of trying to get them properly fit with hearing aids, we can use live captions to help supplement what they are missing through audition. So definitely some good apps. Have you used any of the apps?
Actually, I have. I started using live captioning on Zoom frequently because I did a hearing loss. I did a workshop during the summer, and they had live captioning, and I feel like and they also did sign language, and with the live captioning, it's kind of crazy to me how much captioning can help me understand, and it helps us so much. It's one of my favorite tools. I use captioning all the time when I'm watching TV, a movie, doing homework, and watching a video. I love captioning. It's a blessing to have that.
Yeah, so the more we can support that, we have a handout we've made for all of our patients that they can just take with them when they leave the clinic, listing all the different closed caption resources. And I think people are especially grateful right now that there are so many resources, and it's fortunate, your phone can very quickly be turned into a support mechanism for you if you just engage one of these apps, and then you can hold it up to the person you're trying to hear, and it will translate what's being said. So I think we have to piece together whatever we can, speaking more slowly, rephrasing, using written or live captions to help support. And then probably the most important thing is making sure that patients have well-fit, properly programmed hearing aids.
Well, thank you for being on my podcast today, Dr. Stephanie Sjoblad. It was a lot of fun having you on, and I personally learned a lot of information that will help me in the future, and it was a great time. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it was a pleasure to be here. And I think one thing I just want to make sure I end the podcast with, we talked a lot about getting your hearing tested and protecting, and strategies for communicating and the importance of hearing aids. And I just wanted to wrap up by making sure that everyone is careful to protect their hearing as well. That means being careful when you're working with loud woodworking equipment or lawn equipment, playing in the band or musical things, and doing anything where there's a lot of noise, including listening to your MP3 players, your iPod, your phone. Be careful not to turn the volume up too loud, because once you damage your hearing, you cannot get it back. So the suggestion is half on and to wear earmuffs when you're using equipment that's very loud. So that's just my last little tidbit to make sure you take care of your hearing to help make the chance lower that you don't have to come see an audiologist too soon in the future. Thanks again for having me, Noah. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning into today's episode, and I will see you next time on Can You Hear Me? Because sometimes I can't hear you.